You worrying and you going through day-to-day life with so much that you face with.
I feel like I'm constantly playing catch up. I'll get so far and then something else will get thrown at me.
I couldn't even buy my kids nothing for Christmas because I had to choose between making that car payment or getting them something.
It's not in the falling, it's in the getting back up that makes you who you are.
You just have to keep pushing no matter what.
Programming on WTTW is made possible in part by viewers like you and by the following.
Who can help your child conquer their orthopedic condition? Shriners Hospitals for Children. We do whatever it takes to treat any orthopedic condition. Shriners Hospitals for Children. The most amazing care anywhere.
WTTW programming originates from the Renee Crown Public Media Center.
PBS, where the drama is on Sunday nights on Masterpiece. Miss Scarlet and the Duke.
The woman is unhinged.
Followed by All Creatures Great and Small.
We can't find Tricky Woo.
And the premiere of The Long Song.
Slavery, that dreadful evil, will be finally abolished.
Miss Scarlet and the Duke. All Creatures Great and Small. And the premiere of The Long Song on Masterpiece.
Hey, I'm Dave, and you're watching WTTW.
Good evening and welcome to the Week in Review. I'm Amanda Vinicky. Paris Schutz has the evening off. We will be joined by our Week in Review guests in just a moment, but first, some of today's top stories. The National Weather Service is out with a winter storm warning. Snow is still on the ground from this past week's storm, but the Chicago area could get between 5 and 9 inches more, plus heavy wind gusts. Freezing rain is also in the forecast. That warning in effect from noon tomorrow through Sunday evening. Chicago is on pace to meet state coronavirus benchmarks such that further restrictions could be lifted starting Monday. But city officials say even if Chicago makes it to phase 4, when the state allows groups of up to 10 to be seated together, the city won't ease up on limits yet, meaning Chicago will once again be following rules stricter than the state requires. Chicago Public Health Commissioner Dr. Allison Arwady told WTTW News that the city doesn't want to rush it and trigger a third COVID wave. You can read more on our website. Coronavirus vaccinations are ramping up in Illinois. The state reports 58,000 residents got a COVID shot in the arm in the past 24 hours. It's the third day in a row Illinois has administered a record number of doses. Still, officials say they're ready for the feds to increase the supply. In an effort to expand the pool of professionals able to give shots, Illinois today invoked an emergency rule. Dentists who are CPR certified and who take a 4-hour training program will be able to administer the coronavirus vaccine. It comes as the Illinois Department of Public Health reports 4,156 new cases of the coronavirus and 71 new deaths, bringing the COVID-19 total caseload in the state to more than 1,120,000. A total of 19,138 Illinoisans have now died after contracting the virus. Joining us now for the Week in Review are Sarah Karp of WBEZ, Marianne Ahern of NBC 5 News, Kimberly Egoin of WVON, and Greg Pratt of the Chicago Tribune. Welcome to all, but first, Mayor Lori Lightfoot appeared on Chicago last night and appealed directly to teachers to help strike a deal with the Chicago Teachers Union. Let's take a look at what both sides had to say.
We have done what we can to try to accommodate you. If you've got an underlying condition, if you are the primary caretaker for somebody who does, but we need you to talk to your union leadership to meet us at the table to get a deal done so that our children who are suffering aren't left behind.
The mayor is talking about, the CTU being the source of stopping things up by raising unreasonable demands. That's not true. We want to raise demands about things that that matter to our schools and safety of our members, the children, and allow us to get schools open in a safe way.
Gosh, February 1st seemed like such a long way away when CPS first announced that it wanted K-8 students back in school then, back in December. Again, now it is Monday. This all comes, lots of negotiating going on. Greg, what is the latest? And I do mean the latest because this is a developing story.
Well, they're still at the table. They're still trying to figure out. The signs are somewhat positive insofar as they thought that they were going to be done a while ago and done for the day, and they came back. It's negative because they don't have a deal. There's still some pretty hard rhetoric out there. Right before we came on, Jesse Sharkey tweeted out or retweeted something about something pretty combative about the stance that they're taking, which is not necessarily conciliatory. So we have a situation where two sides feel like they're pretty far apart.
And we had been expecting to hear from Mayor Lightfoot during a press conference a couple of hours ago that was postponed as negotiations continue. Sarah, what do you make of this? Is that a positive development?
You know, I would not necessarily say that's a positive development. I think that I don't really think that she was going to announce a deal per se, but she was going to announce that they were getting closer or that they had agreed on some main issues. But then something got broken in that announcement. Something did, for some reason, that didn't happen. So now they're back at it, and she's promised another press conference tonight. So I think that they're trying to figure out what she can say. So I actually don't think that it's all that positive, because even the things that they might have sort of agreed on, I don't know that they were the really big issues. They might be more about like timing and things like that than like really big issues.
Sort of, they got the easy stuff checked off perhaps, but the more difficult elements yet to be negotiated. Marianne, it is no secret that there is no love lost between Lori Lightfoot and the CTU. How does that factor in?
I think it factors in a lot. And I think when you say CTU, I would put Stacey Davis Gates versus Lori Lightfoot at the top of that list of not getting along. I'm not sure about Jesse Sharkey. He has been a little more conciliatory. Now, from what I am hearing, and of course, everybody's hearing something different, but this is complicated because, of course, they've never had to bargain these kinds of issues before. Of course, we haven't lived through a pandemic before. And the union's asking for perhaps, pie in the sky. Hey, we want everything. Why not? That's what they should ask for. And CPS is saying, no, don't worry about it. We got it. We got a plan for you. And the teachers know full well, they've been through this before, that maybe that plan isn't as set in stone in every single school. I'm wondering if perhaps, and this is from someone close to the negotiations, might they, and this is a big might, come up with phasing it in, starting with the pre-K to third grade rather than all of elementary, and get some kids into school and see how that works. But that is, again, just one of the proposals that are on the table tonight.
And I do think that that's one of the things that the CTU has sort of floated for a while. I mean, they've talked about phasing in, going back. And the big question is, will Mayor Lightfoot, will Janice Jackson, who really dug in and we got to get kids in school, will they go for it? And even if they phase it in, can that really be done by Monday? Is Monday a realistic date, considering that's, just after this weekend?
Well, they already had the pre-K in. They had some of the kids in. Why not? They should be ready to go.
Right. Well, they have to figure out who's going to be in front of the kids, like which staff are going to. They still have the issue of which staff are going to come in, which even if you did bring in the K-3, you still need to figure that out.
Well, and these are teachers that haven't been in their classrooms, ostensibly, since March in many cases. Kimberly, I think this has to be feeling very frustrating, particularly for parents, and yet the potential of another strike during Mayor Lightfoot's term, the second in 15 months. What does this mean politically for her?
Well, I think what it means is, in this case, you have got what may be the strongest teachers union in the country. They know how to use power. And the mayor blinked last week, if you really think about it. You know, she had been setting this past week as the deadline for teachers had to be in the school. And then she said, oh, no, we'll go ahead and push it off a few days. Now it's a whole week. And at that point, we knew that she knew she didn't have the power. She has the entire school board behind her. She has Janice Jackson. She has the education, but she does not have the power to make the teachers go in. Parents are completely lost in this whole scenario, even in the scenarios that Sarah and Marianne have been talking about right here. You don't know if your K-3 child is going to school, if your K-8 child is going to school. We're not even talking about high school students. It's a mess. And the thing is that they're in the middle because the teachers union looks out for the teachers. The Janice Jackson and the mayor look out for the administration. Who represents the parents in this scenario?
I do think, though, that if more parents were going to bring their kids into school, so it's only about 32% of parents are even, thinking about having their kids return in person next week. I think that would give the mayor a lot more power in this. I think one of the things that the reason why the union has had so much power is because the majority of parents have already said they won't bring their children in. And not just recently. I mean, they said this in December 7th was the deadline to say that. So even though you can't say
I would add to that, though, Sarah, that even though that happens, and we've seen this happen at other school districts, archdioceses around the country, initially parents are reluctant.
Right.
But once they see that schools are operating and hopefully the kids are safe, you're going to see more wanting to come to school.
And the vote that CTU took was a foreboding tale. Everyone here knows that CTU regularly enjoys 90% plus support of their leadership's positions. And in this case, they made out at 71%. So it's trickling down. I'm saying 71% to not go back in school. That is extremely low. So all across the board, I think time will be the biggest indicator, but also this whole thing is a tale of disparities. When we're talking about the number of students who are going back, they're mostly white students, and a lot of Black and Latino students are not going back.
So that what is behind that? Why is that?
Well, it reflects a few things. It reflects the one thing that is obvious. COVID-19 has disparately impacted Black and Latino people, and families are scared about it. But it also reflects the fact that 90% of white students in CPS go to a level 1 or a level 1A school. The education that they're getting is something that is really worth going back to. The disparities in education is a major issue as well, and no one's really talking about that.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. That's why there's a little bit of a dynamic here where the union, I do think that there are a lot of teachers who do want to go in and who will go in, but there is a significant part who are still refusing to go in, and are, it's not the majority that they would get in a sort of a strike vote, but this is a complicated issue and it's a personal issue, and it's not, and that's why this is so difficult, because there's politics here, but there's also people's personal experience and emotion, and there's some teachers, they feel like this is life and death. There's some parents who feel like this is life and death because they think that they feel like their kids are falling behind, and they feel like their kids are emotionally not doing well. So on both sides, there's a lot of emotions and a lot of reasons. And all I'm saying is that I feel like the union, even though they're not enjoying like complete support, one of the things that they've been able to say is, well, look, the majority of kids aren't coming back next week. So we don't have to have as many staff as you had originally, Lightfoot and Jackson.
You don't need to bring everybody back into schools if they don't have all full classrooms to teach, is what you're saying.
Right. I'm just saying that's one of the reasons why their argument that we don't have to have everybody in the classrooms has sort of held some water.
So Greg, at this point, go ahead, Marianne.
Go ahead. I'd like to see a public opinion survey of what the public thinks. Grocery store workers are back. CTA bus drivers are back. Healthcare workers, of course, and they knew what they signed up for. Teachers didn't sign up to be nurses. I understand that part. But at some point, you have to learn to deal with what the cards you've been dealt and take personal responsibility, absolutely. And if you have a pre-existing condition, stay home. But I do think there has to be some kind of plan to get the teachers and the students back.
And as the CDC is out now with new guidance that appears to say that schools are safer than many had initially at least presumed, Greg, if the mayor does back out, will she be perceived as weak, as caving?
Well, that's the primary concern politically for her. And, you know, it is hard to imagine, you know, she already has a reputation amongst a lot of critics for being too soft on the CTU, for not having taken them to the woodshed in 2019, for not having been tougher on them now. You know, it's a perception that's out there. It's a very real thing. Actually, my esteemed colleague John Cass wrote a great column, or an interesting column, I should say, about that very dynamic. And he was expressing something that a lot of people do feel, that she has gotten beat up by the CTU. Now, it's interesting because it does, you know, we don't know what's going to end up happening. It does seem like the CTU has her against in a corner, and they're going to, and they're trying to get concessions, whether it's phased in, whether it's pushing the date back, whether it's them refusing to come back on Monday, and then she calls their play and says, I'm going to lock you out. And then that's a whole nightmare for her politically. And so no matter what, this is a really tough position, and it is probably hard to imagine it being reconciled with the mayor winning everything she wants. She's probably going to have to bend to what the to the arguments, and she's going to have to bow to the arguments and
bow, bend, compromise, lots of synonyms we could substitute in there. Want to go through a quick round of rapid fire. I know it's difficult to make a prediction. Nonetheless, parents, I think, really, of course, want to know, looking ahead to Monday, at this point in time, go around each of you. What do you predict? Kids back in school, strike, delay? Sarah, start with you.
I don't think they'll be back in school. Even if there's a deal tonight, I don't think they'll be back in school. It's too soon.
But not necessarily strike. All right, Kimberly.
Yeah, I don't think that they're back either. And I think that CTU has dug in and they don't feel like their concessions are being met. So if you want to say strike, I'm thinking maybe strike.
Marianne.
I think that they come up with a way to say, maybe not Monday, but by the 8th, or they give it another date and they work on it and say, we're starting with the kindergarten to 3rd grade. Gives everybody a little bit of a compromise.
And Greg, finally, I think you kind of answered, but
yeah, I don't think that everybody will be back by the 1st. I don't think there's any real chance of that. If it happened, you know, I think we'd all be surprised. I think the mayor's office itself would be surprised.
All right, well, let's move on to other news. Governor J.B. Pritzker sends 500 National Guard troops to the U.S. Capitol. Illinois lawmakers will return to Springfield for a one-day-only session in February as the new speaker, Chris Welch, picks his leadership team. Census delays may spell trouble for the constitutional deadline to redraw the state's legislative map. And meanwhile, the city is also scheduled to redraw the city council ward map. So first, Governor Pritzker reacts to the announcement of a very shortened legislative session next month. Take a look.
The sooner the legislature gets to work, the better, whether it's remotely or in Springfield. But we need legislation to keep moving because there was veto session that was canceled. The lame duck session was very short. It's time to get back to work.
Now, Marianne, this is a bit of a change in tune because a role reversal of sorts, because legislators have been saying, hey, we want to get back. They weren't called back to session while Pritzker was really calling the shots during the pandemic. Why does the governor want Springfield in so badly?
Well, he needs a budget to get moving, and he does also need to get, he needs the emphasis off of him and the vaccine rollout, number one, because that hasn't been exactly the way he wanted it. And I know he has a lot of other factors involved, but they need the legislature back to get the budget started in place. And why can they not figure out how to do it remotely? We have a new speaker. He's a little more adept at online. Let's get it together and start working towards a way. And I know they have to change the rules, but it's time for them to start meeting.
Now, at some point, Governor Pritzker is going to act on this major criminal justice package that was approved by the legislature during its lame duck session earlier this month. That would, of course, end cash bail in Illinois, a huge change. This, even as Chicago and the suburbs are seeing this scary spike in carjackings. Greg, what's going on there?
Well, the city has crime is out of control in the city. The shootings are up too, and lately we're talking about carjackings, which have spiked, but so have murders and so have shootings, and we have so many problems there, and it's not under control. And the city is trying its best, but it's I suppose but it's out there. They blame COVID. Some people say they don't have a strategy. Some people say that the CPD is in a state of disarray. There's a lot of criticism out there, and it's probably a mixture of all sorts of things. But the bottom line is it's carjacking is the headline this week, but the public safety situation just isn't good in Chicago right now.
Kimberly, is the city trying its very best?
I don't think they know what to do. I think that the city in general for generations has been used to certain crime happening in certain communities. And for the first time in my life, I'm watching this crime of opportunity happen to Black people, white people, Latino people, Asian people, every neighborhood, and even the suburbs. And I don't think that they really have a plan for this. I don't know if cash bail is the issue. That is something that I don't know how that ties into it. It's respect for the police, it's respect for human life. And it also is, what do you do with a 10-year-old criminal at 10 years old, 14 years old? And how do you rehabilitate someone like that and not end their life in jail, but how do you rehabilitate someone like that without throwing away their entire life? This is a very complex issue.
So many juveniles caught up in it. It's scary and sad on so many perspectives. Now, Marianne, want to move on to the coronavirus. Illinois lagging even in comparison to other populous states. The New York Times reports that we're really far down the list with only 5.4% of the state's population thus far vaccinated. Why are we behind?
Well, that is the million-dollar question of the day. And if you have anyone who is part of this now 1B, 65 and older, educators, grocery store workers, there's millions of people who now qualify in Illinois, but tell me where to sign up is what they're saying. And that the sign up is very complicated. They're going online and all the spots are taken. People are saying, oh, just wait till midnight. How isn't that an opportune time, for folks to get up at midnight or stay up till midnight, because the slots are taken immediately.
Yeah, even then you can't get through.
Even then, exactly. And then today, a good friend of mine who is an eye doctor, who did receive, after hours and hours and hours of signing up, did receive the first dose and works in the Chicago Public Schools, as a matter of fact, testing students, cannot get the second appointment. Now, what's wrong with that? That was supposed to be automatic. When you got the first appointment, you were supposed to get either a 3-week or 4-week appointment later, depending on which vaccine. And
without that booster, everything would all run amok. And right. This is, by the way,
the governor said he was saving. He told us he had to save because
that's why we haven't seen so many doses.
They have 1 million. Yes. So not a good rollout. I know they're trying hard to get it going, and it has been the first week of adding so many people. But when we're counting on this, so many in Illinois, across the world, I think it's time to let's get this moving a little bit smoother.
We've got a few minutes left, a lot to get to. So, Sarah, we do need to bring up, this is where another racial disparity, however, rearing its head thus far in Chicago. About 50% of those who have received the vaccine are white, 17% Latino, 15% Black. What can Chicago do to bring more equity to vaccinations?
Well, they did say that they're going to roll out this plan that's going to focus on some communities where there's a lot of people that are getting COVID. And so, a really direct plan and working with those providers. There does seem like there was something wrong in sort of the way that they thought about where the vaccines were going in Chicago, because a lot of them went straight to healthcare providers. But then I'm seeing all over online, like, oh, I'm driving here and there, like I just got an appointment, there's leftover stuff. I mean, it seems a little bit like the Wild West of vaccines. And what that happens is that the people who are like most able, maybe they're not out working at the grocery store, maybe they have the time to commute, they can do it, they can hop in the car and go, right, and have the connection. And really sad things too about, you're hearing like I'm hearing of some like elementary schools on the north side and some private schools who have hookups with healthcare companies that once they've run out of, they have extra vaccine, they're allowing people to come in. I don't know how that's correct to do.
So much frustration. Everybody wants this shot and is clamoring for it. So much inequity there. Want to get to real quick, because big news with redistricting here. The Latino caucus in Chicago objecting to an independent commission drawing the city's next ward maps. Let's take a listen to the mayor's stance.
A relic of the past of having ward boundaries drawn in a back room is just that, a relic of the past.
Kimberly, is she right? This is Chicago. Any chance aldermen aren't going to be able to draw their own wards?
I don't see that happening. I mean, I know what she's saying, but as you said, this is Chicago. This is Illinois.
Kimberly, I'm not sure we've got you, unfortunately. So does somebody want to jump in there? Oh, you're back. Okay, good. Sorry, Kimberly.
Okay. Yeah, I'm listening to what she said, and I'm also looking at the practice. I saw the WTTW Lincoln is crying expose like everyone else did. And I mean, this is the state and the city for backroom deals. So even if it doesn't happen in a back room, maybe it'll happen in a smoke-filled room. All of these groups are going to exert their power and their numbers. So it's going to be interesting to see how it doesn't become a backroom deal.
Well, in this, even as
about that, but well, you know, the proof will be in the pudding. She's saying all the right things about reform and all that, but at the end of the day, the aldermen need to approve it. And are they going to give it up independently when there's no reason to? And, you know, I don't know, probably not.
Well, in this, even as there is a pushback, the feds now say they're not going to get the census data to Illinois until a month past the constitutionally required deadline to even pass these new legislative maps. And wow, is that the height of power? And meanwhile, of course, we do also still have members of the Illinois National Guard again going off to Washington, D.C. because of an ongoing threat there. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to discuss that because we are out of time, but we give so much appreciation to our guests this week: Sarah Karp, Marianne Ahern, Kimberly Egoin, and Greg Pratt. And that is our show for this Friday night. Don't forget, you can get Chicago Tonight and the Week in Review streamed on Facebook, YouTube, and our website, WTTW.com/news. And be sure to join us tomorrow night at 6 for Chicago Tonight Latino Voices, then 6 p.m. Sunday for Chicago Tonight Black Voices. And then we're back at 7 o'clock on Monday. How rideshare drivers are managing during the pandemic. And a small business incubator in Humboldt Park working to retain the neighborhood's culture. Now for the Week in Review, I'm Amanda Vinicky. Thank you for watching. Stay healthy and safe, and good night.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a Chicago personal injury and wrongful death firm, sponsoring a free continuing legal education program for over a decade for lawyers across the state.